Art History 497x. I'm Professor Luce, and we are continuing with our introduction to functions on Codecademy. And so we have just sort of processed through the first 3 exercises in this set of exercises, and we are on to how does a function work. And I think this is probably the part where hopefully functions will start to make sense. I think it's hard in this sort of set of sequences. It's hard to kind of make sense of what a function is until we get to this point where this is probably the clearest definition of what we should be expecting when we're trying to write a function. So it says, how does a function work? Let's break down exactly how a computer thinks when it sees code for a function. And so the basic structure of a function is var. Function name equals function of some parameter that's in parentheses, and then code block, code block, code block. So the var keyword declares the function. The var is always followed by a name. The keyword function tells the computer that it is a function and not something else. Remember, var just means variable. So you're saying, I'm going to declare a variable. It's called function name, and this is a very special variable. It's a function, and it's a function of a parameter. And those parameters go in the parentheses. And the computer then will look out for that parameter in the code block. The code block is reusable code then that's between the curly braces. Each line of code inside those braces must end with a semicolon. That's very important. And the entire function ends with a semicolon. Also, when you call the function, you need to end the calling of the function with a semicolon as well. And when we use the function, that's the terminology we use. We call the function by typing the function's name, and then we, in parentheses, put the value of the parameter that we want to use. And the computer will run the reusable code with the specified parameter then substituted into the code instead of the word or whatever other type of data you've called for in that parameter. Okay, so now we've got a set of instructions that this exercise wants us to do, and it says, let's make a function that tells the world what you want to eat. Declare your function and call it food demand. You can call the parameter anything you like, but we'll call it food because that's the thing that is going to change each time we call the function. The reusable block of code, your reusable block of code should follow this. Surround it with the right brackets. The code you want to repeat is console log I want to eat space plus food. Call the function and put in the specific food you want. So that's pretty easy. So we are just going to go ahead and start it. We've got a few lines of commenting here. And this, a lot of times, those lines of commenting are really important for us to understand what we're supposed to do here. They're just giving us, some little hints to write the food function below. And in your reusable block of code, remember to end each line with a semicolon. So that's what we're going to do. And if you remember, how do we start out that function? I'll just give you a second to think about it. That is how we started out. So we're going to call for a variable, and we're going to say the variable is going to be called food demand. And the very next step is to say food demand equals function. And that function is going to be a parameter of something we're going to call food. Okay? All look good to everybody? Now, if you want, you could do some things like just giving your function a little bit of space to breathe. And this can be, just helpful for readability, because remember, human beings are reading this. And so in some cases, it's nice to have a little breathing room for things like that. Okay, well, the next step then is we're going to need some curly braces because now we want to have a block of code. And it says then, it tells us that in the reusable block of code, what we want to do is console log. So we want to print, I want to eat, space, and then food. Now, there are a couple of ways oops, spell that right, console.log, good. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can handle this. What the Codecademy is showing you, first of all, is again, kind of the most basic. It wants you to understand the rules very well, which isn't to say that there aren't other solutions for things. So what it's trying to tell you here is that you can basically create a series of strings. So in this parentheses, It doesn't just have to be one string. You can use the plus sign just like you would with arithmetic, only you can basically add strings together. So it's saying, I want to eat, and then it's wanting to put a space because you don't want to say, I want to eat pizza, I want to eat pizza. Like, eat pizza isn't one word. You need a space between it. And so it's saying, remember to put a space between these two things because you're a dumb computer and you don't know that. So it has this way of calling for that space, and then it says food. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Now, is there another way to do this? Yes, of course there is. And so I don't want the computer to, there we go. Back that up because we're going to do a comment line. I don't want the computer to do this, so I'm commenting this line out just to show you an alternative. You could very equally as well do I want to eat, put your space there, and then put plus food. These would actually result in the exact same result, right? So you can either put your space here as part of the string, or you can have a middle string that's just the space. So it's identical ways of getting to the exact same result. Probably just good to show you this way so that you understand what is actually happening. But you know, if I were doing this, I'd probably just remember to put the space on that extra string there. You know, just something for you to think about. So, okay, that should be everything we need with that. And so now we just need to call the function. And so I do see I'm getting the linter. The delinter is giving me a little warning there. We'll go check that out in a second. But food demand, and we're going to say pizza. Oops. But remember, you're putting in a specific kind of data here. You need to tell the computer that the data you're putting in is a string. Like that, right? What is this wanting? Oh, right. End of the function needs a semicolon. There we go. So this should come out just the way we think it's going to. I want to eat pizza. That's very good. Just want to show you, though, what might happen if you called the function again. And this time, like if you didn't put the quotes, what happens? You just put sort of nonsense there. Notice that it doesn't turn yellow, so it doesn't understand it's a string. It thinks this is something else. And even if you put a semicolon next to it, it's going to return an error because it's thinking that that's a variable because you haven't put the quotes around it, right? Alternatively, if you were to put a number in here, try 66, it accepts 66 because it understands that as a number. So it says, I want to eat 66. Now that doesn't make any sense, but the computer doesn't care about sort of sense in that way. What we want really in there is a string, and so that's why you always put those quotation marks around it, because that's telling the computer that it wants a string. Okay? So going on here to the next lesson, tying it all together. So why is code organized the way it is on these first few lines? And this sort of gets to that point about putting those extra spaces in that I was doing earlier. We're really talking about readability. And what this section is all about is the idea that a lot of what you do as a coder, you need to clear out that code there, sorry. A lot of what you do as a coder is you try to debug code. You have to figure out what you did wrong. So the point of this exercise here is to basically debug this line of code, and it's given you this model up here so that you know what good code would look like. So you have to basically look at this and figure out if you think you can understand what that code should say and then correct it so that it says what it should. So I am going to give you a little bit of time to work on that. Okay, so hopefully you've sort of thought through what it is that that function should be doing. And so we're just going to actually, rather than actually going through and debugging, because there are so many mistakes there, it's actually harder to fix it than it is just to retype it. So I just commented that line out, and we're going to use that as a model, and we're going to fix it so that it reads properly, right? So what you have going on here is you can understand that there is a greeting being called. It's a function, and it's supposed to be a function of the name, and the purpose of the function is to print the name. So it's a pretty silly function, but we can fix it so that it's coded properly. And that would be first by calling var, saying we're going to establish a variable. The variable is going to be called greeting. The greeting is a function, and it's the function of something we're going to call name, right? Easy enough. So now we need our code block. There we go. The purpose of this code is simply to console log name. So we're just wanting it to print name for us then. And we need a semicolon after that. And that's the end of the function. So we need a semicolon there. And now we want to call our function. And so we call that simply by calling greeting. And in parentheses, we put, who should we put in Kaya? Yep, Kaya. There we go. And so then we need a colon after that, and save and submit code, and it said Kaya, right? So we've got that one all debunked. Okay, so that basically takes us through all 5 of these first exercises. I'm going to let you get started on the next 2 sections here, and that will take us through the first module of today's lesson. So just get started, and from this point on, for the rest of the day, we'll just be working through Canvas on everything. So if you have questions that you need answered as things go forward, just type it into the chat or raise your hand using the raise your hand icon. We can talk it out. Okay, thanks so much.